The most common question I get asked about our Mathematical Firefighter Study Guide is whether or not there are lessons inside. I'm going to answer this question today and take you on a tour inside the study guide. That way you have an idea of what's inside. And I'm also going to give you a tour of the math that you will see on a firefighter aptitude test. So grab a pen and paper because there is going to be some valuable nuggets within this video. My name is Luann and I own S.M.A.R.T Tutoring and Test Preparation Services. I am a firefighter aptitude test preparation tutor, and I'm also the author of our firefighter study guides. The first thing I want to draw your attention to is the S.M.A.R.T Tutoring Mathematical Skills Assessment. It is at the very beginning of the Mathematical Study Guide, and I did that for a reason. I wanted you to be able to use this resource in one of two ways. You could use the text and go through the worksheets and the practice test one page at a time from the front to the back. You could absolutely do that, and it would be an all-encompassing review of everything that you'll see on a firefighter test. The other way you can use this text is to target the areas where you need to improve. So this is where your skills assessment comes in. Once you've completed your math assessment, you're then going to take up your answers using this answers page. Now, when you get an incorrect answer, it's going to tell you the type of math that the question is associated with, and then give you a page number in the text that is associated with that specific math. So if you got a subtracting decimals question wrong, you can go to the prescribed page to work on subtracting decimals. The last thing I want to point out before we move on is this page can also act like a table of contents. It gives you an idea of how the book is laid out and where you can find the different types of math in terms of the page numbers that are provided. Now, I want you to think about the different types of math as specific chapters, if you will. And what we're going to go through next is the chapters of each type of math. The most common question I get asked about our Mathematical Firefighter Study Guide is whether or not they have lessons inside. The answer is yes. On each of the worksheets, you'll see squares, and inside those squares, you'll get the lessons you need to complete the math on the worksheets. I'm going to walk you through some of these math questions just to give you an idea of how that relates to the experience of the textbook user. So the instructions here says to add with regrouping. So that's what we're going to be doing. First, add the ones. So I'm going to use the example 23 plus 17. The ones are the 3 and the 7. So 3 and 7 is 10. It then says regroup any set of 10 to the left column as needed. So I have a group of 10. I'm going to regroup that. So 3 and 7 is 0. I'm going to regroup the group of 10. And then the instruction says, next add the tens, which are the numbers to the left of the column, the ones column, and then continue working in the left and regrouping as needed. Okay, so I have to add up the tens. In this case, I have 1 and 2, which is 3, and 1 more, which is 4, to give me 40 as an answer. Okay, so that's an example of using the lessons in the worksheet to answer the questions that are on the worksheet. And again, this is in the Firefighter Aptitude Study Guide. Throughout the text, you'll see that the math gets gradually more difficult. Here we are on the dividing whole numbers worksheet. I wanted to draw your attention to some similar features on each worksheet. So first of all, you'll know you're on a worksheet because it says so up at the top. And then it also says down below the lessons that you will get, that you have answers associated with the questions on the worksheet in the back of the book. So you don't have to question where the answers are. And then lastly, you can use each worksheet as a timed activity. So first and foremost, I want you to focus on your accuracy. That is, are you getting these questions correct? If you are not, that should be your priority. If you are getting these questions correct, then you can work on your efficiency, and you're going to be able to do that with more practice. So continue to hammer out these types of questions until you get within, in this case, 8 minutes. So every worksheet has a time allotment attached to it, and that way you can focus on your efficiency right after you master your accuracy. The next chapter, if you will, is the decimals chapter. And just like every chapter, we start off with the calculation or the numerical style math before we get into another practice test. As you can see, there are lessons in the boxes, and then you have some instructions in terms of what you need to do and how much time you have if you are using this worksheet as a timed activity. Now, when it comes to decimals, you can add, subtract, multiply, and divide decimals, and the text is going to walk you through each of those in specific worksheets. Now, when you are working with decimals on a firefighter aptitude test, you might be forced to round your decimals, and they don't tell you that. So keep this in mind. If you are working on decimals and your answer options on the test are in decimals, then your answer should be an exact match. But if you are working on decimals and your answer options on the test are whole numbers, then they're forcing you to consider whether or not you need to round a decimal. So keep that in mind, because they don't tell you that on the firefighter aptitude test, but they do expect it of you in terms of you knowing to do that when it comes to it on a firefighter test. The next stop on our tour is fractions. In the fractions section, we look at adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing like fractions, unlike fractions, and mixed numbers. I do recommend that you find alternate sources after completing this workbook, and that's because fractions requires a consistent review of that type of math. There are so many rules associated with fractions, and many people struggle with them, and I think that's because they don't do them enough. So you want to make sure that once you have a handle on how to answer fractions, that you continue to do it so you don't forget how to do it in a time period where you weren't working on them. Another thing I want you to know about fractions that they might not tell you on a firefighter aptitude test is that your answers should always be simplified. So whether you're adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing fractions, always ensure that they are in reduced form. That way you won't be trapped in a wrong answer because you didn't simplify. That's a very common mistake I see in firefighter math with students that I work with. So please just make sure that you make a note to always practice simplifying your fractions. The next section of math that we cover is rate and proportion math. Rate and proportion math is predominant on the CPS test. Now, an example of a rate and proportion question is this. If an engine operates at a constant speed for 3 hours on 40 liters of gasoline, how many hours will the engine operate on 150 liters of gasoline? We know that this is rate and proportion math because a rate is the relationship between two amounts or values. And we can see that rate there, it's underlined. 3 hours on 40 liters of gasoline is the relationship that we're going to use, or the rate that we're going to use to extrapolate an answer. And in this case, we want to determine how many hours will the engine operate on 150 liters of gasoline. Just like every other section, we walk you through practice questions so that you get an idea of how to break down that question. And then after your worksheets, we give you a practice test. Your practice test is obviously in word problem format because at this point, we are working on rate and proportion math. And as you can see, it's similar to what you would see on a firefighter test with 4 multiple choice answers to choose from. The last section in the Mathematical Firefighter Study Guide is percents. Now, percents, fractions, and decimals are interchangeable. You want to make sure that you practice all three and can convert numbers in between the 3 different types of math. Now, when it comes to percents, there are 2 different types of methods that you can use to solve percent questions. I recommend you choose the method that you are the most comfortable with. The methods are the fraction method and the decimal method. I break both of them down in the text so you can practice both, which I recommend that you do. And then from there, choose the method that works best for you and then continue to use that moving forward when you come across a percent question. While we're on percents, let's talk about the different types of percent questions that you could see on a firefighter aptitude test. The first type of percent question you could be asked to solve is to find the percent. An example of finding the percent is, what percent is 35 of 720? The second type of percent question you could be asked is to find the part. An example of this is, what is 5% of 200? The third percent question is to find the whole. In this example, it says 15% of what number is 300? And then lastly, you could be asked a percent of change question. An example of a percent of change question is, the price increased from $15 to $25. What is the percent of change? Now, I will give you a tip. It is important for you to identify the type of percent question you're being asked because each question has a different method to solve it. Just like other sections in the Mathematical Firefighter Study Guide, once you complete your worksheets, you will be presented with a practice test in the same type of math that the worksheets are in. So in this case, we are in percents. You will have 20 questions to complete, and they will be mixed percent questions. So you will have to practice identifying them in order to answer them. You can see here that you are starting off with a burn chart, which I like because it's similar to the types of questions that you see on firefighter aptitude tests today. As mentioned earlier, there is an answer sheet for you to use at the back of the study guide. You can copy this and use it as many times as you like. I like that because it gives you an opportunity to practice your transferring skills. So taking an answer and transferring it onto an answer sheet in this case, you can circle it as if you would be circling a Scantron sheet. I also like using the answer sheet because it keeps your book clean. That way you're not distracted by circles on a page that might not be correct. If you use your answer sheet, you can continue to use your book countless times to get the practice that you need, especially if you're working on those efficiency, the timed activities, right? You don't want yesterday's answers affecting tomorrow's results. Speaking of answers, there are answers at the back of the book that are provided for you so that you can check your work. I would like you to get 85% or greater in each test of 20 questions. So 85% or greater on each worksheet and 85% or greater on each practice test. If you're achieving 85% or greater in a section, it's safe to say that that's a sufficient knowledge base that you can work from and you can move forward in. If you find that you are struggling and you are not achieving 85% or greater, chances are you need further explanation and or more practice. If you are looking for a math tutor, you can find me at smarttutoring.ca. I do provide online math tutoring to American and Canadian aspiring firefighters who are looking to pass their aptitude tests. And the questions I use are both from this text and from other resources. But as you can see, they're similar to what you would be working on in a firefighter aptitude test. And to me, I think that's important to know because you don't want to be working on something that you aren't necessarily going to need in an aptitude test setting. If you are looking to grab a copy of the Mathematical Firefighter Study Guide, you can do so at smarttutoring.ca/shop. I trust you found this walkthrough helpful. I wrote this study guide for you and I did this video for you too, not only to show you what the book is about, but also to give you some insight in terms of what to expect on the mathematical section in a firefighter aptitude test. So hopefully you found some golden nuggets within this study guide walkthrough. Thank you very much for being here. My name is Luann and I own S.M.A.R.T Tutoring and Test Preparation Services. You can find me online at smarttutoring.ca. Thank you and have a smart day.